Hi, I'm Mark. This is Mark's Tech Vlogs on YouTube, and today I'm going to bring you a review of the iRig Stomp IO. Now, the iRig Stomp IO is a foot controller that can be used with your laptop or iOS device. It came out in 2018 and it retails with an RRP of £300. If you shop around, however, the going price at the moment seems to be about £250. The iRig Stomp IO is a USB foot controller for guitarists that works with both your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac or your PC. If I'm honest, however, it's certainly largely geared towards using iOS devices with it. The idea of the Stomp IO is pretty simple. What if you could have hundreds of amps and effect pedals for your guitar at your fingertips without needing a load of money and a huge studio? With the iRig Stomp IO, that's exactly what you can do. And so I'm going to unpack the functionality of this device through this review. Let's kick off by talking about design. The iRig Stomp IO looks like a fairly traditional pedal board. The front has 4 foot switches and an expression pedal. It also has a gain control and a volume control. There's also a device bay with a flap at the front for putting your iPad or iPhone on and making sure they don't easily slip out. This pad has plenty of grip, and so there's no movement when you're tapping it. The rear of the device has a whole variety of inputs and outputs. There's a joint 1/4 inch and XLR input for your guitar or microphone. There's a 48 volt phantom power button, a headphone out, stereo outputs, MIDI in and out, space to put 2 external pedal or switches, USB out and in, and iOS out and in. There's also a place to plug the power supply in. This means it's worth noting that this device is mains powered and not battery powered. The design as an overall is pretty much just black, and so it looks modern and smart and doesn't really stand out at all. The edges are very slightly rounded, and the wedge shape means that there's a slight angle so you can easily see your iPad from above. The expression pedal and device bay both have a rubber surface to give you plenty of grip. As an overall, this device feels really well made. A large amount of it is made from metal, and the foot switches feel pretty sturdy. Next, let's talk about hardware. First and foremost, this device is meant to be an effects pedal for the 21st century. But it has been packed with some extras so it can double up as a USB recording device too. This means if you want to treat it as a recording device, you have one input which takes an XLR or a jack, and you record onto your computer via USB or using your iPad when it's plugged in. The phantom power button means that if you need to use a powered microphone, you can power it straight from the device. The device itself is recognised in recording programs such as Logic Pro, and so it will function like any other one-channel audio recorder. Now, I'm not really going to talk about this function because it's very much a secondary function. What I will say, however, is that the audio output from a headphone out seems pretty quiet, and you can't use the effects from the Amplitude Mac or iOS device to record those effects unless you use the app to record. This means that if you've got a guitar tone that you like, the only way to record that is in the Amplitude app. You can't record that in Logic. And if I'm honest, the Amplitude recorder isn't an ideal app if you're trying to make semi-professional music. But let's be honest, you probably didn't buy this device as a recording device. So let's get on to what we're really here to talk about, using the iRig Stomp IO as a pedal board. Firstly, I'm mostly going to focus on using it with an iPad because realistically that's the most practical way of doing that. Connecting it to your iPad is really easy. You simply use the bundled lightning to pedal cable and you plug it in. The other thing that's really well thought out is that it charges your iPad as you go. What you need next is one of the iRig apps, and you've got a choice of these. There's Amplitude versions for acoustic and electric guitar, plus Mic Room and Vocalive for vocals. They all function in a largely similar way but with different effects, and so I'm largely going to focus on the Amplitude CS app for iPad. What I will say about this app is that realistically the app is so complex that the iPhone version is really difficult to use because of the size of the screen, even on larger iPhone models. What I've found from using it is that your best bet is to use this pedal with an iPad. When you first open the iPad, it looks pretty complicated, and it certainly takes a while to get your head around, but actually it's a pretty good app with tons of stuff packed in. One thing you'll notice quite early on is that whilst you get some bundled effects, there's lots of functions and things to purchase within the app, so keep this in mind when you buy the pedal and when you download the app. Within the app there's 2 main views. There's default mode and there's live mode. In default mode you have an amp on screen, a link to the cab where you can adjust microphones and some pedals, and this screen really is where you set up and play around with your rig. All of the amps and pedals function just like normal amps and pedals, and so you can adjust their effects until your heart's content. With post FX, this means you can have up to 6 pedals. The cab settings let you change the cabs and mess around with microphone positions. This means you can have different heads to different cabinets. An in-app purchase in the cab settings lets you add a second microphone for bigger sounds. Again, you can change these microphones around to really get the sound that you want. There are so many combinations that it's pretty easy to get lost in messing around. But if you find a sound that you really like, you can hold a favourite and save it. You can also save it as a preset. Of course, if you open the app or add an amp pack and you don't really know where to start, there's also a set of presets for each of the amp packs you download. These typically have some choices within them, including clean, crunch, heavy, etc. Once again, there's a lot of in-app purchases here, and so you can do all sorts of things if you've got some money. If you want to, you can add extra pedals, which typically cost around £4 each. All the available pedals, including the ones you already own and the ones you can purchase, are displayed on the same screen, and you can scroll them by pedal make or type of pedal. You can also add extra amps and amp collections, which tend to come with a few pedals as well. Amps themselves tend to cost around £5 and collections around £20 depending on the collection. There's also options to just buy everything. It's worth saying that all of these extras can easily add up, although they're obviously cheaper than buying the physical items. It's also sometimes worth holding off because there's quite frequently promotions that happen in the in-app purchase store. One of the really cool things is a lot of these extras are licensed by companies like Fender and Orange, and so you know that you're going to get some quality sounds because these companies are willing to stick their names to the sounds. Within this default mode, you also have a tuner, the option to add in loops or backing tracks to play along to, the option to use a looper if you want to do Ed Sheeran style guitar. You can create some drum loops to play along to, and there's a built-in recorder. The built-in recorder is fine for jotting down the odd idea, but to use more channels within it, you have to purchase the full version of the recorder. The second mode in the app is the live mode, and this for me is really where the pedal board and the app come together. The live mode has 2 main settings. The first setting lets you view your preset banks. This is where you have combinations of amps and pedals that you've preset or ones that have already been included on the app. Using the foot switches, you can scroll between these and choose from your favourites. You can also scroll these on your iPad and choose which 4 you want to activate using the pedals accordingly. From this mode, using the iPad, you can tap a pedal to tweak the settings or switch out hardware. This is nice and clear and easy to use. The second option within the live mode is probably my favourite, and this is to be in Stomp mode. This is the mode you'd probably use for a particular song if you're using this bit of kit live. You enter Stomp mode by holding down buttons 3 and 4. This then works like your traditional pedal board, with tapping controllers to turn pedals on or off. You can of course also tap the effects pedals to alter settings as well on the iPad. This mode works really well and feels like you're using a traditional pedal board but with tons of options. If you get these things set up at home or at practice, this makes the pedal board a really viable option for gigs. Within this mode, you can also switch up or down between different banks by holding buttons 1 or 2, depending which way you want to go. We can also talk a bit about the expression pedal, because by default it's assigned to a wah pedal if a wah is present, but you can assign it to any control. You do this by holding down the setting that you want to set it to, and then by activating the pedal. If you've got some extra pedals plugged in, you use these the same way. If I'm honest, I haven't used this with extra pedals yet. The other options you can access in live mode, as you'd expect, are the tuner and the looper. The tuner does exactly what it says on the tin, and it works by holding down button 3. The looper is switched on by holding buttons 1 and 2. In the looper, you probably need to use the touch on the iPad a little, but most things are achieved by the pedals. You can set a tempo, and then you can play along to a metronome if you want to, or you can just freestyle it. The third switch turns the looper on or off for starting to record or stopping, and the first and second let you navigate between channels. All in all, this live mode is absolutely brilliant, and you could quite easily use this for a gig. So those are a load of the features of the iRig Stomp I/O, but what's the verdict? The iRig Stomp I/O is a really good piece of kit and does exactly what I want it to. It gives me a ton of pedals and amps without a huge price tag, providing me with a great array of sounds. However, it is far from perfect, and so let me list some of the problems for you to keep in mind. Firstly, if you want to use this pedal and its effects with your MacBook and the iPad or iPhone app, then you have to purchase everything twice, because in-app purchases don't sync between iOS devices and laptops. This has meant that whilst I've got the Mac version installed on my computer, I actually don't use it and I just use my iPad with it. Secondly, the app takes a long time to get your head around. I've had this pedal since the summer last year and I'm only just getting around to writing a review because I wanted to be able to tell you how it works, and it took quite a long time to understand it. Essentially what iRig have done is they've packed a lot into the app, and this is great because it has lots of features, but it also makes it incredibly complicated. This leads to the amp feeling quite clunky at times. The third problem is that the only way to record the sounds that you've perfected is through the recording function in the app or on the laptop software. This means if you've got a sound that you use live all the time and you want to record it in the studio, you can't just record it in something like Logic Pro. You have to run the line out into a different recording device. This also means you won't be able to edit the sound later on, it will just be recorded. What this means is that essentially the recording device functionality of the pedal and the pedal functionality are very much two separate entities. So having talked about the features and some of my frustrations, who should buy this device? If like me you don't have the space or the money for a huge rig, but you want all sorts of pedals and things you can play around with until your heart's content, then this is the device for you. I love the range of effects and amps, and it's a lot of fun to play around with. The live mode is something that iRig have got absolutely spot on in the app, and actually you could quite easily use that for a gig. The other nice thing is you can use this pedal with bass, acoustic or electric guitars and vocals, which gives it a huge amount of flexibility. I hope you guys have found this review helpful. I'm very aware there's probably a load of things that I haven't covered and I haven't mentioned, so please, if you've got questions, do stick them below and I will try and answer those. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider hitting like and subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.